Shachar, that's a beast.
Nice.
I love it.
Thanks.
I love like the subby bass working off the kick, off of the drums, and vocals got so much character. And when that synth comes in, it's huge. Yeah, great mix, man.
Yeah. So thank you. So that is you mentioned the artist Triple D. You've heard his name by now a few times.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, that's my studio partner who's a drummer and been producing too. So that's like one of his works. Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, these drums are actually programmed, which is kind of funny because he's a drummer, but he chose to program the drums here and not just play them live. And yeah, it's a really interesting collaboration. The rapper that you heard, his name is Sugi Dax. He's a monster. He has so much good stuff out. I've worked with him on a few different projects. And he is, aside from being an amazing rapper, as you heard, and he always talks about real shit. Like, he doesn't rap about nonsense and how great of a rapper he is or all of his money. He raps about real stuff. But what you might not expect is that he is a killer piano player. He's like trained like in music school, like jazz piano player. In fact,
I heard some piano chords in there.
Yeah, so you didn't get to the bridge though, right? In 90 seconds.
No.
In the bridge, that's him playing. So it's actually two different recordings. What you hear in the verses is different.
It's like samples or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was actually recorded maybe by Triple D at the studio and then like chopped and sampled and pasted. But then when we get to the bridge, there's a clearly more live piano that I actually recorded at our studio. And he's such a creative, amazing piano player. And the trumpets as well. The trumpets that you hear are him playing as well. So he's a monster musician, aside from being an incredible rapper.
Wow.
Yeah, and the groove in the song is just like, I mean, you heard it. It's insane. And that kind of comes from, again, Triple D and his groove sensibility is just is outstanding.
That's amazing. Do you remember how you affected the vocal?
No.
It sounds great, man.
Thank you. The vocals part of it, if I remember correctly, I didn't record the vocals. Sugi actually recorded them himself. And he sent at least some of them with some effects already. And then I think I kind of EQ'd from there, controlled the dynamics from there, and maybe added a couple of throws or, any reverbs to blend it into our track. But some of the effects were there already. He did a really good job, just like, picking some really cool stuff.
Amazing.
In the hook, you hear another singer come in, a female voice.
Right.
That's
female voice, yeah.
Yeah, Whitney Meyer. She is another good friend of ours, incredible singer. She has a lot of her own material out there, and again, worked with her on a bunch of different stuff as well. And her voice came in clean, and I did all that. I think I recorded her voice as well. Yeah, that was all in our studio, and I recorded her singing and then mixed it. So that I started mixing from scratch. Yeah.
Awesome. And do you remember what you did with the sub bass, or it's been too long?
That one's been kind of long ago, so I don't fully remember. But I think again, it's all about the approach and like how you deal with the material that you get delivered, right? So like a big thing for me, and what you're talking about is like the way that the kick and the sub bass kind of like dance back and forth, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's always very important to me. Like I love that. I love when I hear a song on a system that has subs and everything, right? And I can feel that interaction, that like back and forth pulling and pushing between the kick and the bass. And so it's something that I always I always try to get, and make sure that the subs are heard when they're supposed to be heard, but then like they're out of the way with the groove, right? So the decay of the sub or the kick plays with the groove so that it feels like it's dancing. Otherwise, if your kick is too long, for example, or sub bass 808, whatever is too long, and there's no space, then there's no groove, right? Like to me, groove is all about the spaces, right, in between the notes.
Bass players,
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about the notes you don't play.
Right. I was recently
where you stop sustaining the note.
Yeah, I was recently talking to someone. Just a little sidetrack. I was talking to someone about Rocco Pastria from Tower of Power, and how he would play those like really fast 16th notes, but they're still staccato, right?
Yeah,
he doesn't
very staccato.
He doesn't blend those notes, and it's so fast that it's hard to play it staccato, but he fucking does it. And that's where the groove's at. If he just played it all legato like I don't know, a rock song would, right? There's no groove in that.
Right.
So back to
that's a great point.
Yeah, back to our case study. Like always trying to find the right sustain of the kick, of the bass, so that it's in the groove and like making that push and pull. Again, the approach to that, the path that you take to it, depends on where you start on the source material, right? So like you kind of never know until you crack it open and
it could be like a compression thing. It could be a transient designer thing.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you killed it, man. So
thank you. Appreciate it.
Congrats.
Yeah.
Dude, this is awesome, man. Shachar, this has really been so much fun. But before we wrap it up, I do like to ask a few kind of more general questions, as maybe you're expecting. Yeah. So just in terms of like creative energy, we all have days where we're super hyped to get in the studio and do our work, and there's days where we're a little bit less motivated. Do you do anything to kind of stay motivated, to stay in that good headspace, to kind of want to work and always be in that good zone?
That's interesting. Okay, I have a couple answers. One is some days that, like you said, you just don't really feel like it. Those could be great days for bouncing stems. You know what I mean? Like those could be great days for the stuff that you don't really want to do. You don't really feel inspired, and it's just like, I have like do you use like Bounce Butler or Andrew Shep's?
I've tried. I've messed with Bounce Butler, but I don't. Yeah. I don't do enough stem bouncing that it's worth it for me to pay monthly.
I got it. Yeah,
that might change.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Anyway, so I have kind of my own version of it over the pandemic. Oh. Yeah, I collaborated with a friend of mine who's a musician but also a programmer, and I told him, like, here's a piece of program that I would like to have. I don't have any programming experience to do that, and basically he wrote a script for me that is basically what I wished Bounce Butler did at the time, but it wasn't quite working the way I wanted it to work. And Andrew Shep's Bounce Factory didn't exist yet at that time. So I have my own like Apple script basically.
That's crazy.
That just runs stems for me. Yeah. So like
what does yours do differently than Bounce Butler and Andrew Shep's?
So with Bounce Butler, and I think they changed it since then, but at the time you had to make a bunch of different sessions. Right. You had
save as
exactly do a bunch of save as each time like a different track is soloed. I didn't really like that workflow, and also like it just kind of took time for the session to close, session to open back up, and all that. I wanted to have a macro basically that in Pro Tools you use Cubase, right?
No, I'm actually a Logic user.
Oh, Logic. Okay.
I know Cubase is industry standard in Israel, but
right. I thought
for me.
I thought I heard you talk about it before, but I guess it was different context.
No.
So in Pro Tools, there's like shortcuts for everything, right? For like soloing a track, bouncing it, moving down to the next track. So it's essentially very a complex macro that goes track by track, solos it, bounce, and the more intricate part is renaming it properly. And that's where my knowledge kind of got stuck, right? Because like I know how to program macros. That's pretty basic. But to really go deep into the Pro Tools brain and tell it, now change the name to this, hit bounce, wait for the bounce bar to finish before moving to the next track, that's what I didn't know how to do. So it's essentially a macro of like solo track, bounce it, move to the next. Solo track, bounce it, move to the next. Solo track, bounce it, and so on.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's been really useful. Bob loves it. All like the other people.
I was wondering what you were doing when you were bouncing stems for Bob.
Yeah, so, I use that.
Cool.
I use that every time.
Nice.
And I shared it with a couple other people here at the studio and love it. And yeah, so anyway,
so you actually have a product on your hands here.
Sort of. It's like it's not packaged very well.
It's jankier.
Yeah, it's an Apple script. You know what I mean? It doesn't have like a nice interface and stuff. But yeah. But at this point,
that's cool.
Again, like at this point, Bounce Factory is out, which just kills all of that. You know, it's like it blows everything out of the water. Of course, it comes at a premium too, but for now, I'm just sticking with mine. So going back to your question, some of those less inspired days could be good for those type of tasks, whether you're bouncing stems or if in your case you don't do that often. I don't know, maybe it's just setting up a session for tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like the setup doesn't require a lot of inspiration, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's just cleaning the studio. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's another important part of our job that we don't really think of as part of our job. But cleaning the studio, right? Yeah. So some days I would come here like it's not even a part of my job to maintain the studio, but I do it anyway because, hey, you know, maybe I have the time. I don't particularly feel inspired to start a new mix or anything, but like I can clean the bathrooms. It's like, it's not fun, but it's something I can do, and everyone benefits from it at the end, right? Yeah. So that's the one answer I have for you. The other answer is and you might have gotten a sense of it early on when I said that I want to be the best mixer in the world. I have a certain level of competitive nature in me. My girlfriend always goes on about it. I don't particularly feel like I'm a very competitive person, but I come from like kind of a sports family. And when it comes to sports, I'm not competitive, which is why I never really survived in the sports area, right? But when it comes to this, I kind of am. And some days that's what drives me. I have this thought process in my head that oftentimes I'm not proud of. It does come from sort of the ego side of me, of my brain. But at the same time, I try to embrace it just enough to keep me driven. And that is when we face rejection in our business, right? It's really hard. Like we do a mix and you're really happy with it and you think it's great and the client doesn't like it, right? We've all been there. It happens. Oh, yeah. I can't wait to the day those type of clients cannot afford me anymore. You know what I mean? Like I can't wait till, and again, I'm fully aware that it comes from an ego place, not really healthy.
Yeah.
But it serves as a drive, right? Like I can't wait till the clients who kind of like, you know, slept on me as they say, right? To then realize like, oh shit, Shak is like way at the top now. I want to work with him again, but now they cannot afford me anymore. That kind of sick thought.
Nice.
It keeps me motivated.
Thanks for sharing the dark inner parts of your brain. Yeah, it's like inspires you to kind of just like yalla.
Exactly.
Let's get back on the horse.
Exactly.
And get better.
Exactly.
And, sorry for throwing my Israeli phrase.